military personnel, people who've served 20 years in the United States military. They're paid.
The quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I would like to continue to raise a simple point, but a point of profound financial significance to America. One of the things that's happened in the bill that's before us today is there has been an extension of the 10-year BCA plan, which was enacted 2 years ago, only 8 years left, an extension of a 2% reduction in payments to providers, hospitals, doctors, to Medicare, who provide services for Medicare, treat patients, and get paid by the United States government. So they were reduced 2%. And this is scored as a savings for the country, and in effect it's perceived as a savings that allows us to spend more money somewhere else. And that savings, as was done in this legislation, involved the last 2 years, years 9 and 10 of the 10-year window from today. And it creates some money, they say, because we've reduced Medicare costs, and that we can spend that money today and this year and next year on non-defense and defense discretionary spending, and we're going to promise to use the money we saved in years 9 and 10 outside the promised BCA 10-year window, which is already moving along. Well, what I want to raise is a deep and fundamental point. Medicare is already in deficit. Medicare is already spending more money to provide for seniors than is being taken in off people's paychecks every week. But Medicare does have a trust fund, its Part A does. Social Security has a trust fund. People have that money come off their paychecks every week when they go to work, and they believe, correctly, in my opinion, they have a right to receive the benefits of that. And they're not happy. They believe America is going in the wrong track when we take that money and spend it, therefore jeopardizing the confidence they should have that their retirement and Social Security is going to be in place. Now, we know there's some deep problems with Medicare and Social Security actuarially, because people are living longer and there are more people retiring, and we've got to deal with some problems there. But what I want to say is the worst thing you can do is to do the things necessary to make Medicare sound, tighten up payments to providers perhaps, although there's a limit at some point to how much you can do there, and do other things to make Medicare more financially stable. But you shouldn't see that savings as something you can spend on a new program. The entitlement programs that went into Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, $500 billion of that money that supposedly was used to fund it was based on reductions in Medicare and some Social Security and other expenditures, saving money in those accounts. But those are trust accounts. They have trustees. And when they ran surplus, as they've done for many, many decades, but not now, when they were running a surplus, the money was loaned to the Federal Treasury, and they spent it. But the Federal Treasury owes it back to them. And now that both of those programs are heading into steep fiscal decline, they're calling the notes. They're calling back the money that they loaned. The trustees of those organizations know who they represent. They represent Social Security recipients. They represent Medicare beneficiaries. And they're demanding their money. And they're going to get it. And we're going to honor it. And so what I'm saying is you can't count that money twice. And that's what Mr. Elmendorf, the director of the CBO, told us on December 23rd, the night before the bill was passed on the floor of the Senate. Obamacare bill was passed in 2009. He said you can't count the money twice. and to suggest you're strengthening Medicare and simultaneously providing a source of money to spend on the new Obamacare program is double counting. He used the word double counting. How simple is this? And my question to him when he gave the letter, and I asked him to put it in writing. I insisted that he did, and he worked for us, and he did what he's supposed to do. And he said, even though the conventions of accounting might suggest otherwise, you cannot simultaneously use the same money to strengthen Medicare and fund Obamacare. That's what he said. So under our conventions of accounting, we have what we call a unified budget. The CBO does it both ways, but the one that we talk mostly about, the one everybody focuses on, is the unified budget. So if Social Security is a little better off, it's assumed that it's in the same pot. Everything is in one pot. So anything that cuts expenses of Medicare and Social Security to make them strong is utilized and considered to put more money in the pot to be spent somewhere else. And so what is happening to us now is the unfunded liabilities in pension funds, retirement funds, Medicare, Social Security, and other accounts is reaching unprecedented levels. Some say nearly $100 trillion. And it's growing considerably. And this is a long-term threat to America. And this is a thing that several attempts have been made in recent years to fix, to confront, to put us on a sound path financially, but it has always failed. People can blame everybody, and everybody is subject to blame, I assure you. However, I do believe that it's quite plain it will not happen unless the President of the United States leads and participates and says, I want to fix it. He's basically saying we don't have a problem, that we're doing fine. And he's not willing to call on the American people and use his bully pulpit to lay out the challenges that we face and how we could put ourselves on a financially sound path without destroying the country. We can do that. We really can do that. But it will take belt-tightening in every aspect of our government, and everybody should share equally in the belt-tightening, not just a few, not just veterans, military people who've served 20 years and disabled veterans having their retirement cut, as this legislation does. It needs to be somebody where everybody participates in tightening the belt, and we could get the country on a sound path. But I want to register again, and I'm going to continue to talk about this because I think it leads to a false impression. It leads to the impression we have more money than we really have. And you can't use Social Security's money, Medicare's money, to fund Obamacare, the Defense Department, or non-defense discretionary spending. It's not possible to use that money twice. Madam President, I thank the Chair and would yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask unanimous consent that I be permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Over the weekend, the state of Connecticut and the country and the world commemorated with grief and continued pain the first-year anniversary of the tragic massacre in Newtown. And on the morning of Saturday, 1 year after the Newtown tragedy, I attended a church service, a beautiful, moving, powerful celebration of faith at the St. Rose of Lima Church, whose pastor, Monsignor Robert Wise, has been such a great friend to so many in the community and such a source of strength and comfort. Later in the weekend, I visited with the family of Erica Robinson of West Haven, Connecticut, who was shot and killed at a nightclub in New Haven on October 26th. This seemingly random act of violence left Erica dead and 5 other individuals injured by gunfire. I have spent months and have been grateful for the experience with the families of those victims in Newtown. And I was equally grateful to spend this time with Erica's family, Celeste and Greg Fulcher, at their home. And I want to thank them for welcoming me to their home on that day. Erica Robinson was only 26 years old when she became a victim of gun violence. And she clearly was a person full of joy and life and goodness for all of her 26 years, and including the day that she perished. She was building a business, a clothing line, and as her business grew, a local store started selling that line of business. And those who knew her described her as hardworking and driven, and she was compassionate. Most recently, she released a special collection in honor of the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. She had enormous potential. She did everything right. She played by the rules. She stayed out of trouble, and she had the support of her 2 loving parents. And she was on track to fulfill the American dream. And now her life, tragically, has been reduced to a statistic, unless we make sure that it is more than a statistic, and that we work and fight to make her legacy one of helping to protect others, helping to prevent gun violence, and take victims like her who are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, as she was that night in New Haven when a shooter who was illegally in possession of a firearm, in fact, apparently on bail, turning to take as a victim someone else in the crowd that evening in the nightclub. And she became a victim that night, inadvertently, unintentionally, and 5 others were wounded. I have her picture here. Erica was more than a statistic. She was a person. And part of her clothing line was this small card that she fashioned herself. It's so regular for us to say, you only live once. But do you deeply understand that it's real? What I'm trying to say is be fearless. Do things always wanted to do. Never let anyone hold you back. Enjoy this thing we call life while we can. People are going to talk regardless, so do you. Forever, Erica Robinson. And may that legacy be forever. May that legacy be with us forever and inspire us to work as we have done on behalf of the families of Newtown, and as we should be doing on behalf of the 10,000 other victims of gun violence since Newtown. And the victims are not only the victims who have perished among those 10,000, they are others who've been injured, like the 5 who were injured that night when the shooter at that nightclub in New Haven was aiming for someone else and sprayed gunfire that killed Erica, took her as a casualty, but also injured others severely and traumatized countless others who saw or watched or heard what went on in that nightclub that night. An establishment that was legally licensed by the state of Connecticut, legally licensed to entertain people and charge for their being there. An establishment that was the last place Erica Robinson knew. Such a promising young woman at the wrong place, at the wrong time. A woman who could have contributed so much to New Haven, to Connecticut, to our country. A tragic loss for her family that continues to honor her life with courage and strength, and a tragic loss for all of us, and for the thousands of people who came to her funeral, because she had already, in those young 26 years, already touched so many lives. We owe it to her and to her family that her legacy will be one of protecting others like her, protecting others across America regardless of the neighborhood or the place in that neighborhood, whether it is downtown New Haven, an urban area, or Newtown, a suburban neighborhood. It should not matter where gun violence is a threat. We should eradicate it everywhere. And it should not matter who may be the victim of gun violence, what her background may be, her race, religion, anything about her. Every human being, every person in the United States of America is deserving of protection that our society failed to give to this young woman. We do a great disservice to our nation when we fail to honor those individuals who may not be in the headline, who may not be from neighborhoods that we know, but others that are unfamiliar to us. And we owe it to ourselves, not just to Erica and her family, but to ourselves as a nation to do better and to make America safer. She deserved better from the greatest country in the history of the world. And we as citizens of that country deserve better and have an obligation to do better. And so we will, I hope, leave a legacy for her, in her name, that speaks to a safer, better America. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.
Lawmakers taking a break now for their weekly party caucus lunches. One topic sure to come up is the federal budget agreement. That measure advanced this morning by 67 to 33 vote. 12 Republicans joined all Democrats in support of the measure, including Senators Alexander, Blunt, Chambliss, Collins, Hatch, Hoeven, Isaacson, Johnson from Wisconsin, Flake, Murkowski, McCain, and Ohio's Rob Portman. A final vote on that measure is expected this week. Now, also on their plate, 2014 defense programs and policies and a number of executive nominations. We'll have more live Senate coverage when the gavel comes down at 2:15 Eastern, right here on C-SPAN 2. Looking now at the White House, where spokesman Jay